Man conceived time. Since then, he is trying to understand what it was he created. Or the most abstract of his ideas, it comes from the simplest of his experiences. Events, succession, motion, spontaneity, change, cause, and effect. He cannot free himself from time, and yet his personal experience of it is an anarchy. Firstly, his perception of time is very limited. Most aspects of the time scale are beyond his senses. He cannot see the mechanism of many ordinary events. Even that small part of the time spectrum he can grasp is elusive and inconstant. In the summer, time hangs slackly across the days. At other moments, time can seem to stop altogether, or utterly lose its meaning. We continually experience events which apparently change the rate at which time passes. Some actions can make the passage of time seem slow, and others can make it seem fast. For us, time is split into three. The present, the past, which we know only through memory, and the future, which all men seek to know. Somewhere a mother must have asked, what will my little boy become? What will he do? What will he say?
Britain has been great, is great, and will stay great, provided we close our ranks and get on with the job.
Even the present we do not perceive as a moving instant, but in lumps of now, controlled by attention or association. At the moment of catastrophe, time can stretch into vivid, ineradicable detail. So when men speak about time, it seems to mean a different thing to each of them. Although subjective judgments of time are undependable, most animals have some form of built-in biological clock. These are often true solar clocks and not governed by weather or geography. These ducks are obviously returning from migration at the summons of a clock time and not a weather time. In man, the nearest approach to a biological clock is the alpha rhythm of his brain. This lies between 8 and 13 cycles per second and is the dominant brain rhythm. This alpha rhythm becomes manifest if the brain is stimulated at the same frequency. This effect can sometimes be accidentally induced when driving at speed past a long row of trees which cross a low sun. As this 12-cycle flicker strikes the closed eyelids, it produces in the mind brilliant colors and patterns, dream images fabricated by the brain. Perhaps it is this rhythm which enables a man in perfect quiet to guess time intervals with uncanny accuracy. But if he is isolated for a long time in pitch darkness, his clock begins to run slow. If he is spun in a centrifuge, however, his clock then runs fast. The biological clock is governed by chemical processes, and so it is affected by temperature and other factors. On the left, the nitric acid is cold, and on the right, it is hot. The hot clock ticks faster. Animals whose bodies are kept at a very high temperature die sooner. And in old age, the body clock slows down, and external time seems to go faster. To every sportsman, there inevitably comes a time to retire. The biological clock, too, is fickle and unreliable. Men have always tried to make time an objective quality which they could measure and talk about consistently. They built machines to contain it. Clocks. Now they have a clock that loses only 1 second in 4,000 years. But still, they are unsatisfied. Still they ask, what actually is time? Does it only exist with events, or in our minds? Is it the same everywhere and at all times? Perhaps to some other part of the universe we could look like this. To the Greek philosophers, time was associated with motion. Time was the measure of motion, just as number was the measure of quantity. They argued that time was either continuous, that is, divisible without limit, or was made up of discrete minimum units. But Zeno of Elea argued that in neither case could time exist, because motion itself was impossible. The javelinist seems to move, but it is impossible that he can move. First, suppose that time can be divided without limit. Before he can reach the end of his run, he must reach the midpoint of it. And before he can get that far, he must reach the midpoint of that first half. Before he can reach even that point, he must reach the midpoint before it. And before he can reach that, he must... And so on, ad infinitum. To move from any one point to another, he must travel through an infinite number of positions in a finite time. Motion is therefore impossible. Or suppose that time has indivisible units. Then motion must consist of a sequence of instants, in each of which the objects are at rest. But if they are stationary at each separate instant, how then can they be moving over the whole interval? The theory of relativity starts from difficulties about the idea of simultaneity. That is, about comparing times at different places. To know of an event, the information must be brought to us by a signal. Sound, light, messenger. Each travels at only a certain speed, and therefore takes time. This start looks simultaneous only because the speed of sound is much faster than our senses. Slow the speed of sound down to our level, say 5 miles an hour, and the simultaneous start begins to look rather unsatisfactory. Try again with the starter moving. But relativity theory brought with it some even stranger paradoxes. Suppose the speed of light is 60 miles per hour. This young man parts from his friend and sets off around the universe at nearly the speed of light. Einstein says that his clock will run very much slower than his friend's clock. When he returns after what was for him a short trip, 100 years have passed for his friend, who is by now losing interest. If he could accelerate right up to the speed of light, our eternity would pass him in a flash. The fastest way we can get information about something is by receiving light from it. If it could travel away from us faster than the speed of light, it would disappear. Its light could not reach us. Similarly, if we travel away from it. ideas have been taken up by cosmologists who ask about the origin of the entire universe. Was it created, and time itself, in some gigantic explosion at some definite point of the past? Or did time exist before this? A pre-cosmic time in an eventless, matterless void? Has the universe always existed? Or is it trapped in a perpetual cycle? Again, we always think of time as going in one direction. Is this a genuine property of time, or only another of our human limitations? Life in reverse time seems ludicrous, but in subatomic physics the idea is less bizarre. Consider the man to be an electron, and the girl to be the unstable, flighty positron. The bubble cars are gamma-ray photons. A gamma-ray photon can split spontaneously into an electron and a positron. In a world consisting largely of electrons, the positron is very nubile and is quickly snapped up by another electron, and they turn back into another gamma-ray photon. Mathematically, this whole event is equivalent to a single electron bouncing forwards and backwards in time. That is, electrons going backwards in time are equivalent to positrons going forwards in time. If, therefore, there is some part of the universe made of antimatter, its time might seem to us to be flowing backwards. If we rushed to meet an antimatter time-reversed person from such a world, not only would communication be difficult, but the actual meeting would rid us of everyone concerned. In relativistic quantum mechanics, time can be regarded as atomic, the smallest measurable time units being called chronons. For durations less than the chronon, past, present, and future cannot be distinguished. Within the chronon, time order is arbitrary.
An ironic phrase about the ununderstoodity of my remark. Perhaps even the implausible impression that no one has said nothing. Again, I had the that I was the only words, passed over me as if I didn't exist.
And now some scientists are even playing with two-dimensional time. With changes in the concept of time, fantastic, incredible worlds emerge. When man creates an abstract idea, he creates a monster.